Hello, I'm Ghost. I am your host. And, well, disturbing albums, right? It's that one type of disturbing media that isn't really talked about as much as, books and manga and TV and movies. And, while I definitely appreciate all those other things, as I've said before on this channel, I want to bring attention to some other stuff as well. And since a lot of people don't really talk about fucked up albums, I thought I'd do it. And I actually thought I'd do it last month. And I did do it. And then I got age restricted for talking about Super Slide. That's a real bummer, isn't it? Oh well. So, this is actually a part 2. Yay! I got a good selection of ones here. It's nice, lots of different picks. And I'm really happy with how it came out, so I hope you enjoy this. And if you do enjoy it, go back and watch the first part, if you want. I don't like promoting my channel to the viewers if they're already here, but I'll have it at the end, so yeah, cool. I'm going to split it up into 3 categories. We have disturbing because of the lyrics, we have disturbing because of the sound, so stuff that's just really abrasive and distressing sounding or weird sounding, and we've got disturbing because the artist is a god-awful human being. So we'll start off with the lyrics category.
If you wanna fuck around, give us your balls.
Incorrigible Bigotry by Argus Lint is another example of one of those metal albums in extreme metal where it's like, man, this is great. Too bad everyone's super shitty. So usually with the lyrics category, I kind of talk about just like, oh, look at how gnarly this is, or oh, this is kind of sad, super fucked, or something. That's what I did last time. This one is fucked because it's just like really, really openly bigoted. All the lyrics are super anti-Semitic and racist. It's really kind of horrid, which sucks because, man, is the musical composure fucking great for a death metal band, seriously. Like, really interesting song structures, catchy, but not, like, sacrificing brutality. And then, just because of the lyrics, it really does knock it down for me, unfortunately. Like, I can get past a little bit of nationalism, I've enjoyed my good bit of uns and gas fumes here and there, but, like, this is just downright open, very clear pro-Holocaust, pro-slavery bigotry garbage. Which is a bummer. I'll read you a few lyrics. So, on the last song, Hereditary Taint, we have the lyrics. I have a trigger warning at the beginning of the video, but hey man, I'm just, before I get into reading lyrics, I do not condone anything said on any of these albums. I feel horrible reading these. Cavernous pits of earth open wide, receive malnourished forms with great delight. Tattooed unto their arms was a brand. Blood in the face, Jews lie slain, destination once not known. Shock on their faces as the gases flow. Bodies are pushed into the pilot light, only ashes lie slain. It's not subtle. It's very in your face. And before I continue, don't worry, I pirated the album.
I like to be a pirate's life for me.
The thing is, with a lot of extreme metal, you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt, right? You never know when they're just saying it to come off as edgy, or if they really do mean it. But, to my knowledge, this band really does mean it, which is a fucking bummer. God damn it. Same with fucking Peste Noir. Nazi pieces of shit plague some extreme metal scenes, which sucks, because the metal scene gets a bad rap, but for the most part, everyone's really nice and some of the most accepting people out there. It's not a violent or aggressive community, usually. Acid Bath's Pagan Terrorism Tactics is one of my favorite metal albums. It's my preferred Acid Bath album, and it's a very, very unique album when it comes to extreme metal. So sludge metal's a genre mostly coming from the South. We got bands like Down, I Hate God, Crowbar, all those. And it's a great genre, and I like it a lot. Acid Bath is a really interesting sludge metal band, though, because it just has this really unique vibe to it. where yes, it's got that weird, kind of drugged up, boozy, self-hating, hating everyone type of vibe, but also, specifically on this album, the lyrics are, like, poetic and really quite brilliant, without sacrificing any of that super gnarly serial killeristic stuff from the first album. And I love this fucking album, like I said. And Bleed Me an Ocean is one of my favorite songs. Grave Flower's fantastic. It's just a really fucking good album. Well, I'll shut up and stop talking about the album, and I'll read you a few lyrics. This is an interlude? I don't know. It's not an actual song. It's an interlude. We smoke the toenails and hair of the wise man under a black god's thumb. We dance like painted puppets. She bleeds orgasm in technicolor. An ocean of alien mystery. We eat the wise man's eyes for sight that we might see the darkness if we kill the lights fast enough. We eat the brain and pray that our eyes can open wide enough. We burn the dry shell, a funeral chant. The pulse quickens and we dance as the blossoms fall, a scattering of dust to the winds. This celebration of old skin. I feel every flower that is screaming to consume you. There's a little more after that, but... Oh! Pagan terrorism tactics, poetic sadism, is something that definitely makes the album stand out in the metal scene, and make it definitely an uncomfortable listen for a lot of people. Unlike a good chunk of these albums, I actually recommend this one. I love this album, it's really great, and I really, really do recommend it. I don't want to risk getting age restricted again, right? So I can't say this band's name, so... Grape Man. With their live EP Bud. So, I briefly mentioned this in my Traces of Death video, because it's shown from a couple angles in Traces of Death. Bud Dwyer was a politician who may or may not have done some shady stuff, and the day before his sentencing, he had a press conference where he handed out some envelopes to people, and then he pulled out a yellow envelope, which had a... I don't know why some people don't get away with saying gun on YouTube. I'm gonna say gun. He pulled out a gun and then did a bad thing to himself. I don't want to risk getting age restricted. I'm sorry. So needless to say, an album by a band with that band name making an EP, not an album, but making an EP named after that dude. Huh. Yeah. Pretty interesting. Now, I don't necessarily hate this album, like I do some of the other albums in this video, though I don't necessarily recommend it. While it's an interesting release, I don't find it particularly good, or even all that memorable for that matter. I just thought that it was fitting to bring up. I listened to it a good while. I went through a weird phase where I got really into looking into the Bud Dwyer incident. I don't know why, it's a weird thing to be really into researching, but I found it very interesting, so I listened to it at that time, and I'm glad that I'm finally getting a chance to talk about it, because it's under discussed, I'd say, but I don't necessarily recommend it. I'll read you a few lyrics now. It's definitely an abrasive album, it's an interesting album, and it's lyrically quite fucked. So it starts off with, "Bud, don't, this will hurt someone." You know, right before he did the thing, he said, no, this is going to hurt someone. Here's the opening lyrics. 55 years, Bud lied. Question mark for them. Bottled up his question mark. Oh, where do we get off? Laugh at Bud's hat. Purely comical. How could anyone wear it? Motherfucker. Sweats like a pig. Fat as all hell. Laugh at him. Fat as all hell. He is my god. He is pristine. He is pure. Bud's a pretty interesting release, isn't it? Moving on to something more happy. That's a weird thing to say about this album. But let's go on to Bruce Springsteen, right? We got Born in the USA and all that. You know, kind of shitty, heartland rock stuff. So, you know, there's that guy. No one really thinks, man, his music sure is fucked up. Enter Nebraska. Nebraska is the murder ballad singer-songwriter Bruce Springsteen album. And it's pretty fucking dark, honestly. It's also one of the only other ones in this video where I'm just like, this is a really great album and I highly recommend it. It doesn't sound particularly like the Bruce Springsteen you know. Acoustic guitar and vocals sounding awfully pained and tired as he sings about, well, some not particularly pleasant topics to say the least. I'll read you some lyrics right now. I saw her standing on her front lawn, just twirling her baton. Me and her went for a ride, sir, and 10 innocent people died. From the town of Lincoln, Nebraska, with a sawed-off 410 on my lap. Through the badlands of Wyoming, I killed everything in my path. I can't say that I'm sorry for the things that we done. At least for a little while, sir, me and her, we had us some fun. Now the jury brought in a guilty verdict, and the judge, he sentenced me to death. Midnight in a prison storeroom with leather straps across my chest. Sheriff, when the man pulls that switch, sir, and snaps my poor head back, you make sure my pretty baby is sitting right there on my lap. Bruce Springsteen, the born in the USA guy, made that. And I feel like that's what makes it so wildly kind of uncomfortable to listen to in comparison to some of the, other kind of well-known fucked up albums. Even though I'd say that lyrically speaking, it's much, much, much more tame than the others in this lyric section. The thing is that it's that guy singing these lyrics, this really famous figure who's not known for anything particularly dark or evil sounding. And like I said, it's a really good album and I highly recommend it. But, Bruce Springsteen singing about an actual crime case, pretty interesting. I won't get into the case right now. I have a lot of albums to talk about, but hey, research it in your own time. It's a pretty interesting little thing. So, we're done with that category. Did you have fun? Great. Here's the thing. At least I could understand the appeal of all 4 of those albums in some way, shape, or form, even if the Argus-Lint one has horrible lyrics. Great composure. The Bruce Springsteen one and Pagan Terrorism Tactics, great albums. Bud, even though it's not really my even though it didn't do much for me, I totally get why some people would be really into it. So, I can understand the appeal of those albums. However, the sound category we're about to enter, it's a little bit more rocky. So, I'm a guy who defends noise music. I'll be perfectly honest with you all. I defend it quite heavily to a lot of people. For me, noise music is about it being a total deconstruction of music. It resets your brain, it's interesting, it's a form of basically anti-art that I actually find interesting and cool and unique. And oftentimes, I really do actually like it. I like spacing out to it. I like what it does to my head almost. I understand that a lot of people don't like it, and maybe it is all pretentious shit, but for me, noise music is something I've actually been on the side of for quite some time. I cannot really defend this album, though. Power electronics is a kind of noise-adjacent genre, and it's a genre that I also kind of enjoy, but White House's Quality Time is not an album I enjoyed, and the fact that it actually has decent reception is pretty fucking wild to me.
Show me your tribute. Show me your tribute. Baby tribute.
So, White House is a project that Peter Sotos is involved in. Also, this album was produced by Steve Albini, so, the guy from Grape Man, Big Black, he produced Nirvana albums. Pretty weird connection there. But anyways, that's irrelevant. Back to the actual topic at hand, White House. Peter Sotos, though, right? Peter Sotos worked on these albums, and let me tell you, he's a real piece of work. Now, I've actively avoided talking about this album, and I'm going to continue to do so for this video, but if you weren't already familiar, I don't even know if I want to say the name of the album. It's not bad, but I don't want anyone looking it up. Basically, the dude made an album which was all just interviews with people that like children in a bad way. Yeah, so needless to say, Peter Sotos is a pretty iconic guy. His album that I'm referring to is considered kind of NSFL. Yeah, I have not listened to it. but I know about it. But White House is a project that I'd known about for a little while. I'd wanted to check something out, and I heard Quality Time was one of their better releases, and also somewhere I'd heard that, like, it was supposed to be like a noise representation of domestic abuse. I do not have anything backing that up. I just remember hearing it, so if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but that's what I do recall hearing. This album is fucking garbage. Like, again, I've defended a lot of music out there that's not very musical. Not this, though. This is genuinely just mind-grating, fucking repulsive, hyper-pretentious, fucking artsy-fartsy garbage. I'm not against weird shit, noise shit, experimental shit, but this stuff does not work. I fucking hate this album. Maybe I should check out more White House, though, I don't know. But this album specifically, not for me. And it's just so obnoxious. And there are moments where it just feels more like a normal kind of noisy project or a power electronics project. But then there are parts like the track Baby, where it's like sampling noises of kids, and it's just kind of got the noisy shit, and it's just fucking annoying and repetitive. You know, if you're gonna make an album like this, could we at least have made it like 10 minutes shorter? It's not even that long of an album, it's just the same shit over and over, to the point where I don't even have much to say about it in criticism beyond it's just fucking repetitive and annoying. If you're gonna listen to some power electronics or noise or any of that shit, there are so many better projects out there. But I have to give them this. This is definitely one of the more unnerving, because it's not just abrasive noise pummeling your ears. It is kind of off-putting with some of the things being said over top of the, music. We have lots of weird, kind of fucked up shit happening, like, I'll beat the shit out of you, and all the weird kids noises on Baby, and all that stuff. It's a fucked album. It's a really weird album. It's a bad album, but it's an interesting album. And for that, for some reason, I'm actually gonna say, check it out if you haven't. The editor, God over there, my editor, did not like the album as much as I did, but seriously, it's interesting enough that I'd love to hear other people's opinions, because I want to understand why people are defending this piece of pretentious garbage. At least that's what it is in my head. Moving on, we have an album that I actually really, really, really enjoy, which is Sepia by Portal. Imagine death metal, right? You know, you got your Cannibal Corpses and your Deaths and all the good bands, Deicide, all that shit. Now imagine that, but inverted and weird as fuck, and it sounds like it's being played by Martians. That's what Portal Sepia is. Now, Portal Sepia is not their most well-known album, but it's my favorite, goddammit. I've only listened to 2 of their albums. I listened to the first 2. But I really vibe with Sepia. It's interesting, it's unique, it feels like I hear something new every time I listen to it. And while I can't necessarily say I fucking groove out to it a whole bunch, I really like this album. It sounds fucking demonic and goddamn scary at times. I mean, seriously. The way words can't describe this album. You just have to check it out yourself. But it's such a wild, unhinged, abrasive, hyper-aggressive, confusing experience, and it's so unique in the scene that it scratches an itch that really only a couple albums out there do for me. And for that, I highly applaud it. It's a great album, and I really do say you should check it out. Moving on to one that I've had a varying opinion on. Like, my opinions changed a lot over time on this album, but Gnaw Their Tongues is a band I've been aware of for quite some time. And their most well-known album is All the Dread Magnificence of Perversity. All the Dread Magnificence of Perversity is a really wild album because it's not particularly musical. It's mostly kind of atmospheric shit, kind of setting vibes and whatnot. The occasional bit of black metal-y stuff here and there, though. But All the Dread Magnificence of Perversity is a bizarre album, and I feel like the way that a lot of people have explained it is really the best way of explaining it. It sounds like the soundtrack to a snuff film. It just does. I mean, seriously. The fucking album is so distressing and wild and damn near soul-crushing to listen to. Not because it's particularly nihilistic or depressing, because it's not. It's not like that. But it's just such a wildly intense experience. And not in the way of like, oh, Merzbow or Vommer or something, but it's just intense. It doesn't really let up and give you a second of like, oh, this is like a bit more musical and pleasant and nice. It's just constantly attacking your ears. And not in the abrasive, loud way, but just, personally, for me, I feel like just when I'm listening to it, it feels like the world's ending. Now, originally when I listened to this album, I was like, this is a pretty cool album, not too bad, guys. And then I kind of forgot about it, and I liked it a little less at one point, and now I'm back to liking it. My opinion, like I said, it fluctuates, but ultimately, Gnaw Their Tongues, All the Dread Magnificence of Perversity is a pretty damn interesting album. One that I'm definitely not going to forget. And one that, if you haven't checked out, listen to the first track. If you don't vibe with it, probably not for you. Also, there are a bunch of good Gnaw Their Tongues albums. Just want to quickly mention that. Not just this one, but this is the most well-known, and I'd say that this is the most fucked sounding. Moving on to our final one, we have one by one of my all-time favorite bands. Swans is known for their stuff like Soundtrack for the Blind, mostly. That's their most well-known album, probably. But personally, I like their early stuff. You know? Cop, Young God, their first album, Filth, their debut EP. That's the Swan stuff that I really vibe with, just because the no-wave movement was interesting. Now, if you aren't familiar, no-wave was basically an anti-music, anti-mainstream movement made to kind of counter the rise of new wave music, which I guess was deemed as like kind of too accessible and pleasant. So a bunch of dudes in New York City were like, nah, fuck that. And then we got bands like Teenage Jesus and the Jerks and Swans, and among many, many other bands. Rat at Radar is another good one. But Swans is one that I've loved for a long time. I have a fucking vinyl of Filth, for God's sake. But Public Castration is a good idea. Yes, that's the title of the release. Is a live album that takes music and says, remember how we had some stuff resembling music? This is just gonna kill you. Seriously, this entire album is unbelievably heavy, and not in the metal way. It's heavy in this weird, unique way, where it quite literally sounds like everyone in the band actively wants you fucking dead. It's so angry and powerful, and there's so much fueling it. It feels like it's just seeping adrenaline and hate and anger, and it's wild and interesting and really unique, and I fucking vibe with it a lot. Here, I'll play a sample right now. So, yeah, Swans, pretty interesting. Especially Public Castration is a good idea, the Swans live release. Now, I finished up with the sound category. Like I said, a bit more rocky, but pretty goddamn interesting, I'll give it that. You should check out some of these albums, because ultimately these are those types of albums where I think everyone will have a wildly different experience and opinion on it. And all of them, I'm really glad I've listened to, whether it be for this video or if I'd listened to them a long time ago. I think that all those albums are, for one reason or another, kinda worth checking out. Especially for me, Sepia and Public Castration is a good idea. Those albums are really interesting, and albums by bands I really kind of vibe with. Now we're finally moving on to the final category. The album's fucked up because the artist is fucked up.
You're a boy!
in a man's world. And I'm a man who loves to play with boys.
And we'll open strong with our boy Big Lurch. So Big Lurch, he named himself after the Addams Family character, but also I just think it's a really funny sounding rap name. Like, it just feels goofy as hell. But his life was not so goofy, unfortunately. So he made this kind of horrorcore gangster rap hybrid album, and it's pretty bad. Not the worst rap album I've listened to, not even the worst I'll talk about for this video, we'll get to that. But it's pretty damn bad, unfortunately. But his case is pretty interesting. Basically, you know, the dude was a bit of a druggie. And one day, he got high on a bunch of PCP, and then killed and cannibalized his roommate. Because he seemed like he could have gone somewhere. I mean, there were a couple moments where I was like, oh, I kind of see some interesting ideas here. Maybe there could have been more to it. Maybe there could have been more actually good music had he continued his career. But unfortunately, that happened. It's All Bad by Big Lurch is an album that is not necessarily uncomfortable if you just listen to it without any knowledge of what was happening, or what happened. But once you listen to it with the context of what he did, it's a lot more uncomfortable. However, as far as albums harmed by context goes, I feel like the absolute best example is Chuck Berry's Berries on Top. Now, I don't necessarily want to go too into detail about what Chuck Berry did, but chances are you know Chuck Berry, and if you don't know his name, you know Johnny B. Good, because come on, it's Johnny B. Good. And that song was actually off this album. Chuck Berry's a rock and roll legend, and he's one of the most influential dudes out there. Unfortunately, he was a really, really awful person. Not only was he, well, not necessarily known for consent, I suppose, is a good way of putting it, but also, he also liked kids in a bad way. And, yeah, Chuck Berry, famous rock and roll icon, was kind of a creep, and a really horrible, well, he was a creep and a really horrible person. Now, while his influence is undoubtable, and while the music, technically speaking, on this album isn't particularly horrible, I ended up hating it. Why, you may ask? Well, here's the thing. People, I guess, didn't know at the time, of course, but, looking back at the album now, knowing what we know, lines like, you know, she's so cute she couldn't be a day over 17. Yeah, this album aged unfathomably poorly. So many songs sound really creepy. I mean, it's one thing if a rock and roll dude's singing about school and girls. It's another thing when he's known for liking school kids, and he's singing about schoolgirls. That's not so comfortable. Like I said, I don't really want to go into detail about everything he did. You're welcome to research it yourself, of course. But this Chuck Berry album, or any Chuck Berry album for that matter, it's kinda horrid to listen to, knowing what he did. Yes, he's influential, and yes, he made Johnny B. Good. But he's a horrible person, and the albums, like, genuinely, the only album that has actually seriously and genuinely made me uncomfortable was this album, just because of all of it. It's just really, it's kind of horrid to listen to. Let's play the Yoko Ono thing, actually. Yeah, God has a point. Play the Yoko Ono, Chuck Berry, and John Lennon thing.
Two abusers, one woman.
Next up, we got the kind of funniest one, even though it's not funny. It's still, like, I feel like everyone forgets about this, which is DaBaby, Baby on Baby, which I hate that album title. It's just horrible, but ignoring that, DaBaby's not a good person. Not only is he a major dick, but the dude killed somebody. How do we keep forgetting that? Either that or we're choosing to ignore it. But if you watch the footage on the Walmart security cams, he said it wasn't self-defense. And no, we don't know what the altercation was like before that. But DaBaby charging into a guy and eventually kind of getting away and just choosing to pull out the gun does not seem like self-defense. DaBaby's a murderer and a major dickbag, and he makes some of the most genuinely horrendous music I've ever heard. Seriously, this album is so bad. Like, unfathomably terrible. That the idea that this guy ever broke into the mainstream is so hard for me to understand. But then I remember that people like Taylor Swift and Justin Bieber are popular, and I'm like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, though, DaBaby killed a guy. Now, while the content of the album isn't particularly fucked, like, kind of Chuck Berry's or anything, knowing that just makes it really weird to listen to. Why did we let a murderer who makes god-awful music get so popular? Yeah, and the album did come out after he killed somebody. How did this happen? Whatever, though, I guess it'll just never be explained. Sometimes I forget how stupid we all are. But hey, we have one more album, and this is both the most well-known we're talking about here, probably, and also just the most absolutely bizarre, which is the Ronettes, presenting the fabulous Ronettes, featuring Veronica. Now, this album is honestly pretty catchy. I like it. I don't know, man. Call me cringe, but I vibe with this album. The songwriting is decent, the production's good, the performance is good, everything's pretty damn solid. I think it's a pretty good album. Now, a lot of you guys probably don't know, what the hell I'm talking about when I'm just like, the Ronettes case. You're probably like, what Ronettes case? But then if I tell you, Roar, I Can't Handle Change, suddenly everything goes, oh, everyone's gonna be like, oh yeah, that, I know that. Yeah, so fun fact, the Ronettes is real. A lot of people know that, but I feel like nobody actually bothers to listen to their music and just says, I listen to Christmas Kids. I know everything about this case. Well, fun fact, listening to the music that Phil Spector actually produced definitely makes it a little bit more interesting. And honestly, I hate the guy. I feel like that should go without saying, but that guy's horrible. I mean, he's dead. He's dead. And he had a horrible haircut. Like, just put up the picture.
Yeah.
It's horrible. I hate that guy. What an asshole, you know what I mean? So, the case. Basically, Phil Spector was a well-known producer in the music scene. I mean, the dude worked with the fucking Beatles. And, he worked with the Ronettes, and then he met Ronnie? Was that actually her name? And then he met Ronnie of the Ronettes. And he was like, sup? So anyways, they end up having a god-awful relationship, and he basically imprisons her in their home, literally putting up like a fucking big-ass fence around the home, trying to do anything to keep her from leaving the house. And in order to escape mentally, she becomes alcoholic, basically, non-stop drinking as her only way of escaping. He adopted kids to give her a reason to want to stay at home, too, because, motherly instinct, she'll take care of these kids, so she fucking adopts kids, brings them home, and is like, Merry Christmas. Phil Spector's a horrible guy, and not only was he a horrible abuser, he was also a murderer. Yeah, so he actually killed actor Lana Clarkson, star of famous 80s movie Barbarian Queen that probably, one of the people watching this video has heard about. But, yeah, he killed an actress, abused a woman, imprisoned her in his home, and then COVID killed him. I know this is horrible to say, but I kind of liked quarantine. I liked having an excuse to just be a little shut-in piece of shit. It gave me a lot of time to, you know, have self-exploration and stuff. May all the souls, of course, rest in peace. Except for that fuck. The one victim, one of the few victims of COVID, where I'm just like, you know what? I'm not a bad person. I'm not gonna say woohoo. But I don't think anybody's complaining. Phil Spector's 6 feet under, and you know what? He's better off that way. Phil Spector produced some good music, but in the end, he was a horrible person, and listening to the Ronettes album definitely is kind of eerie, knowing what this leads to. And may Ronnie rest in peace, of course. That's it for the video. It was a bit more high energy than part 1, so if you want a more mellow me talking about stuff while sitting outside, I'm sorry I haven't been sitting outside as much, but if you want a more mellow me talking about the fucked up albums while sitting outside, check out the previous video. But I do hope you had fun. I had fun making this video, even though I did have to listen to like 4 albums in a single day. That was a little miserable, but other than that, I've had a lot of fun making this video. It helped me listen to a lot more music. It helped my editor listen to a lot more music, I'd say, even if he didn't like almost all of it. Hopefully, some of the albums, preferably not the ones made by Monsters people, but some of the albums have seemed interesting to you. Maybe you'll check out 1 or 2 of them. My personal favorites of the albums I've talked about today have to be Nebraska and probably, Nebraska and Pagan Terrorism Tactics. Thank you, and I hope you have a good one.